Hi, this is Shannon Port, and I welcome you today to the Art of the Feminine podcast. And today we are going to be talking about the Libra new moon. And so I'm actually very excited about this. Um, I was able to get home in time to start this podcast exactly at the moment of the new moon. And so we just hit 3:12. It's 3:12 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States. And so I believe it's 12:12 p.m. in Los Angeles. And this is the exact moment of the Libra new moon at 26 degrees Libra. And so um, it occurred to me that it would be auspicious to start the video right at the exact moment. And so we're just going to take a moment. And even if you're seeing this video in the future, I'll ask you to just take a moment and really ask yourself what you would like to initiate in your heart at this time. Because as most of you probably know, new moons are times for planting seeds. And we'll talk about why that is in just a moment. But what is it that you really want to bring in right now? If you think about a relationship, we're focusing on relationships in the shadow today in the podcast. So think about something you really want and just take a moment and just see it in your heart, visualize it, feel it, and know that if you truly desire it and if it's aligned for your path at this time, there's nothing standing in the way of you bringing that thing into your life at this time. And so I welcome you to the podcast. Um, so working with the tides of the moon. And so this is Shannon Port from Art of the Feminine. And so if you've been familiar with my work, you know that I work with the divine feminine wisdom. And it's a body of work that's kind of been created over the past, it's been a while, but I'd say almost 17 years. Through lectures and workshops and podcasts and a lot of writing. And so it's when I approach the astrological alignments, I just kind of stream in different parts, different things that come in from different courses that I've taught. And so there's all different kinds of things that we talk about. We talk about alchemy, we talk about the new human sexual paradigm. We really, my work is really focused on the relationship and the reconciliation of the masculine and the feminine, the divine masculine and the divine feminine on our planet. And what a better day. This is an exciting new moon to talk about because it's in Libra. And Libra is the seventh house, and the seventh house rules our relationships, all of them. It rules our relationship that we have with ourself, with our inner light and dark, and the way we work with that, with our inner shadow and our inner light. And that's why I titled the podcast today, I think it was Relationship with Light and Dark, or Relationship with Shadow and Light. It rules that relationship because that's our primary relationship. And that's why Libra is the scales, and it represents justice. It also represents karma, because karma is nothing more than balancing our own light and our dark. It's how we manage what we've created. Is That's where our karma comes from. Everything that we bring in is somehow linked up with some output that we have had, either in this current life situation, or perhaps if you subscribe to it, in another life situation. And so it rules our relationship with ourselves. It rules our relationship with our primary partner, our primary intimate partner, our primary the person that we are on our life path with at this time. It also rules our relationship with people in the world, and with those people we work with, even our enemies, even those people who are our open adversaries. And so we're going to talk about how the relationship that we have with our shadow is so important at this time. It's so important. And we're seeing so much of this being revealed on our planet right now. So many things are happening. The planet, I want to just call it almost the collective shadow of humanity, because that we're in the period of cleansing and purging our collective shadow. And so working, just to say a couple words about working with the tides of the moon. I'm doing these podcasts right now at the new moon and the full moon. The new moon, when we work with the lunar body, we're working with tides of energy. The moon, the energy of the sun in our current situation is brought in through the moon. It waxes and it wanes, and when we're receiving an inflow, an influx of energy, we are waning. We can build things and we can grow things, and then or we're waxing. I'm sorry, we're waxing. We're growing. Every new moon starts a waxing period, and so that's when the energies for creating are plentiful. And so when you really know, when you really tune in and understand how to work with these energies, same energies that govern the oceans, the same energies that govern the tides of our mind, of our thoughts, they govern the tides of our feelings, our emotions. These tides govern everything. I mean, it's when you begin to meditate and really look at what's happening in the world, both the good and the bad, the good and the evil. And so everyone gets to work with these tides. Everyone is privy to working with these tides. So we're in a new moon, and we started right at the new moon, which is kind of exciting. And so we'll take a look at the astrology. We'll look at what's happening right now, and with the planetary alignments. And then we'll start to talk about some of the gifts of our shadow. In fact, that would have been a good title, The Gifts of Our Shadow. And so at the time of this new moon, right now, this very moment, we have first of all, Jupiter has moved into Scorpio, which is huge. It was in Libra for a year. And one of the reasons that Libra is so lit up and powerful right now is because Jupiter just made its move through Libra. It transited Libra for a year. The cardinal signs, Capricorn, Aries, Cancer, and Libra, are houses of action. They house the equinoxes and the solstices. They're times of beginnings. They're portals for bringing in energy and creating in our world. And so, Libra is one of those cardinal signs, and Jupiter just graced through Libra over the past year. And so it added in throughout that time, it was opposite Uranus, and it was also squaring with Pluto in Capricorn. And so the sign of Libra itself and the focus of relationships was really highlighted, and now will continue to be. And now Jupiter has moved into Scorpio, where now it's like, now it looked at our relationships, now it's going to go down under. It's going to go into the deep healing, transformative powers of Scorpio. Scorpio rules sexuality. It rules our underworld. It's ruled by Pluto. So any Pluto themes you can imagine are in Scorpio. And now with Jupiter adding its abundance, Jupiter is expansive, and it brings in the on the tree of life, it's the planet of healing and mercy and love, because it brings expansion, and it can expand us spiritually, and it can expand us materially, but it expands. And so whatever is there will be expanded as well. It could expand if there's something that really is out of balance and it needs to be seen. It will blow it up, so that while it's in Scorpio, it will make sure that we don't miss it, because Jupiter is going to make sure that something is expanded and seen. So we have Jupiter in Scorpio. And just having left Libra, we have Jupiter conjunct Mercury at the time of this new moon. And so, with Jupiter and Mercury in Scorpio, Mercury is the magician, the archetype, the magician. Jupiter is the archetype, the wheel of fortune. With those two together, Mercury rules alchemy. And so, we have a potency in Scorpio, which is also conjunct the new moon and the sun. Not See, they're at 26, so it's within range of the new moon and the sun at 26 degrees Libra. I think Jupiter is at 1 degree Scorpio, and Mercury is at 3 degrees Scorpio. All of these bodies are being opposed by Uranus in Aries. And so we have Uranus, which brings fast news. It reveals things in a very profound way. It liberates, it revolutionizes things, but it brings action. It always brings action, and it brings change, and it brings things to our attention that we have no choice but to look at when Uranus is involved. So Uranus today, right now, is opposite, is opposing the new moon and the sun. These masculine, the moon is a lunar body, it's a feminine body, it's a divine feminine body, and the sun is masculine. It's the divine masculine. It's one of the divine masculine bodies. And so we have the moon and the sun together being opposed by Uranus, and the moon and the sun are in the house of relationships with Scorpio, and the Jupiter and Mercury and Scorpio nearby. So we have that happening. So we also have something that I think is very profound, and that is we have Lilith or Lilith um, at 27 degrees in Sagittarius. She is conjunct the galactic center or the galactic core, also known as the mother's womb or the mother's heart. And so, if you know anything about the mythology of Lilith, and I would like to actually devote a whole video to her soon because it's profound. But she carries, for in our collective, she carries the feminine wound for both men and women. It's a feminine sexual wound, and so it's related to all of these things we see about sexuality, about gender, about repression, about exploitation, all of these themes that are really, really present in our world right now are embodied in Lilith. And so Lilith being at the mother's heart right now, at her birthing place, her quintessence birthing, generating point is aligning her with the power to call in new energy around all of these themes. We also have Lilith conjunct Saturn. Saturn is actually at 23 degrees Sagittarius, and Saturn is getting ready to go across the galactic core one more time for the third time. And so, depending upon how long it takes for these planetary bodies and asteroids to go across the galactic core, will set up the cycle. And I can't remember how long it takes for Lilith. I can't remember her cycle. I know Saturn is about 29, 30 years. So, but with those two together, we're setting up the Saturn cycle because Saturn's going to not come into this area again for about 30 more years. So because Saturn is there with Lilith, Saturn is karma. Saturn brings things into form. So the fact that Lilith has been there with Saturn shows that something is coming in. And I believe we're going to get a little bit of both. I believe because there's so much polarity in the world right now, I believe that it's going to work. It's going to work for both the light and the dark. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But so anyway, we have Lilith there. It's big news because she represents this wound. We're going to bring that and tie that back into relationships, but she's squaring Chiron. I believe it's exact. Chiron is at 27 degrees Pisces, which Pisces is already a sign of healing, a sign of depth, a sign of the victim, a sign of spiritual, deep depths of spiritual inspiration that come from Pisces. And so Chiron and Lilith are squaring each other exact. Remember, Lilith is at the galactic core. We also have Mars in Virgo, and Mars in Virgo is at 28 degrees. So Mars is opposite Chiron and squaring Lilith. So this is dynamic energy between Mars, which is the tower, which can mean the fall, the archetype. I work with the archetypes if you're new to this work, but Mars is the tower. It's the tower of destruction, but it's also the tower of great awakening. The tower is the awakener when we're aligned with our true depths of our spiritual path. But if we're not, the tower brings it down. The tower will bring it down. So we have Mars squaring Lilith and opposing Chiron, and Chiron is the wounded healer. So we have this wounded healer squaring the dark feminine wound that exists in humanity, in the collective of humanity at the time of this new moon. And also we have, see, what else do I want to mention before I start? We have Pluto in Capricorn. And Saturn is going to get ready. Saturn's going to be moving into Capricorn with Pluto, which is also going to be big news. So I just want to pull up something. I've got my other computer, which is shut down. So I can look at some of the notes that I took. Okay. So recognizing our shadow. Right now, the story on planet Earth is relationships. Um, if you know anything about my work, I work a lot with healing sexuality, healing relationships. I do relationship mentoring and a lot of work with the masculine and feminine. Right now, it's huge in our world because when we look into the world, there's discord between um, these two. Oh, I'm what is the word that I want to use? There's these two primordial powers to create. In this world, we have the electric and the emissive. We have two powers. We have something that magnetizes things to us and something that repels things or pushes things away. We have, and these two um, dynamic forces exist in absolutely everything. They exist in conversation. They exist in sexuality. They exist in thinking. They exist in all processing. They exist with the moon and the earth. They exist with the sun and the earth. We're constantly balancing in a state of receiving and giving out, receiving and giving out. And that is relationships. So the shadow right now is what needs some attention. We also need to focus on moving into the light. And I want to talk a little bit about that too. But recognizing the shadow takes the denial, pain, and suffering away. The shadow then becomes the source of inspiration for our art. And the true art, is alchemy. Alchemy is the art. When I named the Facebook page in my website, Art of the Feminine, it's really about the alchemical arts. The true art of the alchemist is alchemy. And so when we embrace our shadow and we understand it, it gives us inspiration and it gives us more substance for our actual art. And when we have that, it improves everything. Now, there's work to be done around the shadow, but the very first stage is when we see it. Most of humanity, when you look out into the world, doesn't realize they have a shadow. They know that they're in great pain. People know that people are suffering. People know that they feel compulsive and feel agitated or attention deficit, or there's just so many nervous system disorders and personality disorders right now. The personality disorder originates with our shadow and not understanding what it is that is driving us from our subconscious mind. And so that's where the shadow exists. So once we recognize our shadow, we get to own it, and we get to begin the healing process. And we get to take some of the pressure off relationships, because until we've seen our own shadow, we will project things onto other people. I know there's a lot to say about that, and obviously I've seen so many different things about arguing the other side of that, but we'll get to that eventually. Um, but seeing the shadow, it's like loving the inner child that's had to carry the wound and the burden for lifetimes of a particular wound. Um, so Libra is about relationships, art, harmony, balance. Um, when we know our shadow, we can take the blame off the world. We can stop being the victim. We can stop blaming the dark, and we can start to see where our own inner God power lies. If we don't see it and if we don't claim it, somebody else will be running our power for us. I believe that there's far too much um, credit given to the outer dark. Now, just to be clear, that there are horrific things happening in our world. There are terrible, terrible um, injustices happening every moment towards children, towards men, towards women, towards the earth itself. However, we have to understand that the part we have in being and taking place in this drama that's unfolding on planet Earth at this time. All of us have come here for a reason, and we couldn't be here, and we couldn't be seen. You can't see it unless you know it yourself. You can't see it unless you know it inside you on some level. So our ego, when we fell, our ego is like the version of the fallen ones, and in the dark, the interdimensional dark and the planetary dark that we see, um, really creating discord in our world right now. So we have to understand where our power originates and how we can truly address this issue. I see a lot of really well-meaning people throwing themselves out into this and wanting to heal it, wanting to have a voice and wanting to speak up, but seeing um, that the discord around them, and I include myself in this as well, all of us, it's all of us, so it's not us and them, but when what I witness this a lot, that we tend to want to fight something outside ourselves instead of understanding really the secrets of the inner work. It's very real. And you will see, it's an example I could say is that imagine a day you're having a really hard time and it seems like everything is going wrong. You're getting attacked, you know the dark is after you, you know that your relationships are going bad, everyone's being affected, whatever it is, things just don't seem to be going right. And you feel that it has to do with the climate of this earth and the mind control and all the things that are happening. But have you ever experienced that you have a shift and all of a sudden everything changes? Now, I have this happen all the time. So, and it's not that I live in dread and fear and discord all the time, but because of the nature of my work, I see it and I'm in it. And I also work with a lot of people, so I'm exposed to it and I see what's happening. And it's very real in our 3D world. However, I also see when I work with people too, sometimes at the end of a session, and all of a sudden everything's shifted and you can feel it. It's palpable. When someone might have come in with huge heaviness and burden. And after um, looking inside and connecting with that source that we're talking about, it's the goddess within us. After no, she leads us to the huge well. After connecting with it, everything shifts. So how does that happen? How does that happen? It feels magical, but if you've experienced that, you know it's very real. And so well, when we and or if you've had an experience in a relationship where you're really going at it with someone, it's really getting woundy. It's like you're triggered, and your greatest wound is coming up, and you just know that the other person just doesn't get it, and you just can't get it across to them, and you know that it's their problem. They don't get it. They don't get it. They're not spiritual. They're not enlightened. They're not awakened. They have all these shadow things going on in their life. And if they could only get it, they too would be as enlightened as we are. Well, if you've ever experienced a shift when you're in a situation like that, when all of a sudden you realize that you yourself were projecting what was happening, it's profound. It's like grace sweeps over you, and all of a sudden there's space, and you realize that everything is okay. Not only is everything okay, but the relationship itself is pristine and beautiful. It's pure and it's beautiful. And if we're attracted to a relationship, if we've magnetized it to us, chances are we're meant to be there. We can't blame it. We're meant to be there. We're meant to be learning that lesson, whether it means that we're going to use that lesson in that story to release it or to go through that lesson. Sometimes Saturn keeps us there for a length of time, and we have to do it. We have to do the work. We have to grind it out. We have to go through the pain until we're released, meaning like we're trying to get out of something, but it just keeps going on and on and on. But then after it's finished, we realize what it was that we had to discover in that situation. And um, so because we have all this energy with Chiron and with Lilith, it's in Saturn at the galactic center. The Divine Mother is really in this cycle, in this Saturn cycle. She's really, the energy is pouring in right now for us to heal relationships. So let me see. I don't want to have this video be too long. But when we discover our own shadow, we can drop our defenses. We can let down our trigger mechanism. When we're getting triggered, it's our shadow. It's not our light. Our light doesn't get triggered. Our light is so powerful. It goes in and with a sweep and knows what to do. One crisp word when our light is connected to our heart, and it's a done deal. Our light is so powerful and it doesn't know what defensiveness is because it only knows its limitlessness, the limitless light, which is really the divine feminine. And so um when we're triggered, when we're feeling it's just something in our shadow needs a little attention, needs a little love, and we need to know why. We need to understand why we're feeling destructive, why we're contracting, why we're feeling threatened, and then take some time with it, love it, and be at peace with the fact that that's the gift that you're carrying on this planet. We've all come to help clear certain things, and the gift that you carry, part of the gift that you're carrying is this burden because you're going to transmute it and help raise the vibration of the entire human race by healing that. And then that very gift becomes that very shadow becomes your gift to the world. There's no, in that countless amounts of people I've worked with, when somebody comes to me and we start like a 3-month mentoring program and somebody comes to me and there's very serious things happening, and that's not always the case, but quite often it is really big things, and they're just, I can see how much pain is happening. There's so much pain, so much agony, so much inner conflict, so much turmoil, and I can listen because I know, I look at, the person as they're in our first session as they're kind of unloading what's going on, and I'm in tears because I know, first of all, if the person has this kind of consciousness to work on it, they're on a path to heal it. And if you're on a path to heal it, the blessings that are going to spring forth from your heart on this earth are amazing. And so when I see a wound, I see the light. I immediately see the light that's going to come from it. And I know the tears have to be cried. I know some of the arguments have to be had. I know some of the relationships, some will stay, some will not last. I know there'll be great pain with that. I know sometimes there's children involved, but I know that when we start to really see it and heal it, that's the beginning of a new life and of a new consciousness. And so the shadow, in that way, we want to know our shadow. So I'm not going to go on too much longer today. But I wanted to say that the story, how to detect your shadow, this came to me before the video. And so I was thinking, when you want to know your shadow, what do you see in all your relationships? What's the theme? Because we all know if something happens just once, it's usually not a big deal. We all have times where we meet someone, something kind of strange happens or a little bit off happens, or we're maybe we're single, we date someone, it just happens to be that one person that's just not right. And it's easy to walk away because it's not our pattern. It's not something that really gets us. But the thing that we know that we're deeply connected to is that thing that triggers us, that thing that rocks us and grinds us and keeps us up at night, that thing that makes us feel sometimes so self-righteous and sometimes so defeated. That's will lead you, those feelings will lead you to your shadow, and it will let you know what pattern you're carrying that needs to be worked out. Now, I did some writing on art of the feminine on the Facebook page. I wrote a little bit about the artist because Libra is art. Libra's intellectual. It's an air sign. Venus rules Libra. Venus also rules Taurus. We'll be looking at the Taurus full moon coming up in 2 weeks. But in Taurus, Venus rules the earth and sensual pleasures and all the goods that we create, and the goddess and the spirit and the goddess. In Libra, Venus is intellectual, it's airy, and it's kind of highbrow. It's about art, and it's about the inner art, and it's about the heart. I want to say more about it, but it's really about the heart, because so is Taurus, but Venus represents the balance of the heart, Venus in Libra, because it represents how, which is the galactic core as well. It's that it opens up the no time in your heart. The scales, when we hit the scales, we're in 0 point. We are in the moment where anything is possible. So that's why we're never statically balanced. Inevitably, somebody will always think, well, nothing's perfect. Nothing is perfect, but as long as we know that we're doing that dance and we're always kind of got our finger on the pulse of what, how much light, how much dark, we'll know how to create with it. And the example I used was an artist and a master. We know the masters, the master painters, when they create a painting, they intuitively are working with the shadow. They know what to make dark to make the light come forward. The shadow has the ability to make the light pop. So it guides our focus. It guides our vision. And so there's a lot of wisdom here to be explored and discovered. And so I'm going to just see if there's anything else I want to say as we close out. Look at your relationships. Ask yourself what the story is that you are that you keep hearing yourself. If if it's a dating story, if it's a love relationship story, what keeps happening? What do you keep attracting? Is there something off in the sexuality? There's so much. Sometimes, oh, this is what I want to close on. I know now the scales in the heart open the vertical. Our linear mind is in polarity, and so that shows that relationships can be in polarity where they're at odds with each other. But in order for relationships to really, really take off and blossom, we have to have that. We have to open the divine within our heart. The divine within our heart sees through every obstacle. It knows, it's the poet, and it understands that the heart is a language of poetry. It's the language of, it's the multi-dimensional self. It's the self that sees things from a higher vantage point and doesn't, it's not defensive. That's why it's not defensive, because there's always, always an understanding that's birthed in the heart. The heart doesn't have to get defensive. There's nothing that can. Now, the lower heart holds our pain, our jealousy, our emotion, our envy, and all that, but we're talking about the awakened heart. Um, when we are in our heart, we're at that galactic core within us, that galactic center. Our quintessence light is lighting up our spine, lighting up our chakras, lighting up our pineal gland, our pituitary gland, and all of our essence. And we can do anything at that time. That's when we're creative, and that's when we're the artist of Libra. And so I hope I got all the planets in, but just knowing that what's happening with Lilith and Chiron is big. And so I think that's it. Um, yes. Okay. I'm gonna close out on that note, and I'll make an announcement and just say I mentioned this last time, and I still haven't got the newsletter out, but I am teaching light body yoga in January and not October. So for those of you that had written to me, and if I haven't answered your email yet, just to let you know, that's coming in January 2018. And if you're interested in learning more about this work, I'll leave a link to it in the description box. And I wish you many blessings. And I'm so honored that I got to be here at the very exact moment of this Libra new moon. And so until we meet again, great love and great harmony in your relationships.